welcome to the webinar. Our topic today, catch Linux issues in minutes, not in hours. I'm your host, Dominic, but you will learn this officially on this slide. I'm a product marketing manager with Paessler for in my 11th year. Isn't it insane? So if you have attended webinars in the past, it's a good chance you have seen me. And as usual, we have some standards. You know the drill, you're muted throughout, but rest assured your questions will be heard and will be answered. You can add them throughout the whole webinar in the chat. And then at the end, we will have a Q&A session. If we don't answer it live, we will follow up per email. So rest assured, if you can't attend, for example, in the future, a webinar, just register and we will also send you the recording via email. Live is always better, obviously, you want to get your answers live, but just saying, if you ever can't make it for whatever reason the live throws at you, rest assured you can get the good stuff also via email as a follow-up. And I'm not quite sure that this is correct. Do we have a poll directly here? I don't think so. So we
might have skipped a slide, my bad.
So Mustafa, if you're already talking, then maybe you introduce yourself. These are our two speakers. One of them finished Elden Ring 6 times. I won't tell you who it is. It will be one of the poll questions afterwards. I'm just kidding. Mustafa, introduce yourself, please.
And more interestingly, running on Linux. My name is Mustafa. I'm a pre-sales consultant at Paessler. And I've been with Paessler now for almost 6 years, working within the EMEA and the Benelux region. And I will be presenting the slides today. So I will be perhaps taking care of the more boring theoretical part, and Marco will be showing us the more interesting practical part. On to you, Marco.
Thank you very much, Mustafa. Yeah, hello everybody. My name's Marco. I've been with Paessler for 5 years right now, and I've worked with PRTG as a consultant before for 13 years. So in total, I'm around this time frame, and I'm a senior trainer and consultant for anything related to Paessler products.
You got a single heart for your introduction, Marco. So that very interesting. So just for the audience, whenever you want to give a reaction, feel free to give us an emoji. We highly appreciate that. And as I say it, the love is flooding in. So thank you for that. That being said, the agenda for today. Who's presenting?
That'd be me. I'll take over here. So our agenda for today, as you see it, we'll talk about some common situations we see with our users. We'll talk about how PRTG can help you, can provide the clarity you need monitoring your Linux environments. And as Dominic has said, we'll have a short Q&A session at the end. But of course, throughout the webinar, please feel free to drop your questions into the Q&A box. So from what we've seen in our user base, many teams begin their PRTG journey in a very simple way. They run a trial, download a trial from our website, install it, the auto discovery runs, and boom, you get some nice sensors running, so maybe some Windows monitoring, and a setup that more or less takes care of itself. It is a good start. However, it is just a start. There is a lot more the PRTG can give you, a lot more than just monitoring uptime or a handful of devices. In day-to-day life, most environments also stay right there, or at least a lot of them. PRTG is deployed, gathering data. It's doing its basic job. But the focus often stays on the basics. So ping, uptime, CPU, disk space, traffic, interfaces, the usual suspects. While this is, of course, very useful, there is a lot more that PRTG can provide. There is a huge pool of possibilities, especially for Linux, that often stays unexplored, and we want to show you the possibilities today. Just before we get into it, we'd like to, we have a very short poll just to understand your focus in the coming 6 months when it comes to Linux monitoring. I'll launch the poll in give you guys a minute to participate, and then we can proceed. We're not done yet, but I can tell you that this already fits what we have prepared for today. Please feel free to give us your feedback. Of course, this gives us a better idea on the focus and also helps us with the planning for upcoming webinars. So we really appreciate your feedback. Then let me share the results as well. I can see the main focus is detecting issues before they impact users, which is something, of course, PRTG can really help with. And today, hopefully, we'll show you how you can do that when it comes to Linux monitoring. All right. So the purpose of today's session is to help you expand your Linux monitoring with PRTG so you can get real visibility. So not just system health, performance, disk, I/O load averages, early warning signs. So basically everything that you need to catch issues before they impact users or business services. We hope to inspire you to use more PRTG sensors and to basically utilize the different and very diverse set of sensors that we have in PRTG. And basically to show you how also you can use those to monitor your Linux environment. All right. So PRTG gives multiple ways to monitor Linux. We have two main protocols that we utilize in Linux monitoring, SNMP and SSH. The simplest split is going to be SNMP for more standard system metrics and inventory style pooling. So think of load, disk usage, memory interfaces. More hardware statistics. SSH, on the other hand, is used when you need deep, detailed insights because it executes commands on the host itself. Looking at the SNMP sensors we have in PRTG for Linux, so for the basics, load, disk, and memory, we do have the SNMP Linux disk-free V2 sensors. Now you'll notice all three have a V2 version of them. The V2s are a modernized version of the sensors. When it comes to the Linux sensors, they were actually recently revamped to make it compatible with our multi-platform probe, which we'll talk about later today. So for example, the SNMP Linux disk-free V2 sensors doesn't only monitor disk space, it also monitors the percentage of free inodes. Of course, inodes can be exhausted even if you still have disk space, so it's very important to keep track of both metrics. Load, on the other hand, load shows you 1, 5, and 15 minute average loads. Of course, load is not the same as CPU. On Linux, it includes tasks stuck in uninterruptible sleep. So that means the value itself is a bit different. But tracking 1, 5, and 15-minute loads not only shows you the actual or the current, let's say, load, it also shows you the CPU trend moving forwards. So the sensor can really give you an early warning, and once you correlate it with the disk and memory, then you can have an overview or get a full idea of what's happening. MemInfo V2, on the other hand, has improved accuracy. It accounts better for buffered and cached memory, and also allows for lower scanning intervals and custom thresholds, which weren't available on our V1 sensors. And now on to the more interesting part. Now Marco will show us how we can set up the SNMP sensors in his demo. On to you, Marco.
Thank you very much. And I'm taking over control at this point. And you should already be able to see my devices at this very point. So the basic idea is very simple on these systems. First off, I'm starting off right now with the Debian system as the first one we're going to jump into. And as you can see, it's already set up pretty much to the full extent. We've put on as many sensors as we could at this very point just to get as much information as we want to have. The first and very much most important part of everything we've added to this whole system would be to have a quite good overview of what this Linux system can provide to the whole infrastructure. In this part, we're starting off, as Mustafa already explained, with the basic information which we like to gather up via SNMP. And for the first things that mostly are always in the instances, but never actually being monitored to the full extent would be things, for example, like CPU load. Sensors like this, that's what we see very, very often in any environment where PRTG is running and which is just gathering up information. At this point, it is very much just gathering information. There is nothing in this point which could tell PRTG to help you with your monitoring inquiries, which means here you can see we don't have any type of red or yellow zone on the system itself that could help me determine when is load too high or when is the load too low in this regard. What am I expecting from the system? And that's already something that a lot of the time can help you determine whether the system is in a good running state or not in a good running state. As well as for any other system in CPU regards, it always counts to how much CPU load is regarded. And with the SNMP CPU load sensor, you immediately get an access to every single core you have available to you. In this regards, it's 4 processors we have and a total over. And at each and every single point, you can jump into the system and define limits to every single system itself, create upper arrow limits, and tell the system till which point would I like to run this and when is it overloaded to inform me ahead of time. Things we don't see very often made, but are very important, especially if you're trying to gather up the data before the injury happens, before the system has a problem. Same goes for the memory side. Same as here, although we are coming out of the box with a available memory system where we can see how much is available in these regards. But also things like the available memory in total and the total memory are very much in terms of monitoring standard there, but not utilized as much. You can see it in these systems, for example, we're talking about 48% availability, which is only 1.82 gigabytes, which means it already may be a low thing for a certain system that is on setup. So the values that are there can be extended, can be used to your liking, and can be configured to fit every scenario you need. The values you will find are very much important for the process you have. On top of this, it's very important for you to set it into dependency of the system you're looking at. So if the system just doesn't need that much available memory, maybe you should consider moving this one a little bit. Another thing we see very often is in terms of disk free. Disk free is your choice to monitor every single disk that you have available. It works on Windows environment as well as it works on Linux environments. For Linux, you can then define exactly what type of disk you want to see, and again, add it on top of this one, what the disk free is available and what disk free you need at this regard, and how much of data you want to see. Everything you have in this is your option, just extended. So once again, we're talking about 3 bytes, we're talking about a total, we're talking about the free space. You have to define what type of disk you want to see and how much of this data you want to see and how much you want to work with in these regards. As Mustafa said, we are also revamping all the sensors into disk-free version 2, so you get even more of the data. And on top of this one, we've had things like Mustafa already talked about, the Linux load averages. Those load averages may help you determine the future of the system and what is happening right now. And what is very important and oftentimes overlooked for all of these systems is that we are providing directly at the glance of an eye to the right side a quick overview over the data that has already been gathered over the last few days, weeks, months. This could help you already determine what's the evolution going to be. When do I maybe need to replace things? When do I see problems inside of this whole system? All this data is available to you at every single point in PRTG, and you can use it to determine and define what will be the next steps for all of this. The problems that may occur can be seen way ahead in advance if you've set up your PRTG already in the back and if you know what the development is. Same goes in these regards, just a little bit more than just having to see the disks that are built into the system. You can also monitor directly via Linux, the physical disk environment, as well via SNMP, where you get the full information not only for the disk that is being monitored directly, but also the physical disk that is being added to the system itself. With this one, you've got the overview of the bytes that are read and written at that point, as well as the load averages, not for the whole system, but the load averages determining for this one physical disk, which is very much important if your Linux system is broader than just having one disk. All this data, once again, available to you directly from the system and can be put in relation, once again, to the historic data you are seeing, which helps you determine if the system is fit for any further actions in the future or not. In terms of setting all this up, it doesn't matter if it is like a Debian we looked at before, or here in the Ubuntu system, which directly correlates to everything we've done, where we have the same information available to us via CPU, as you can see, just two processors here, that we have available via physical memory again, where we can jump directly into the disks, gather up all the information once again, and have an overview of everything that is available to you in any regard. On top of this one, we've got meminfo available to you at that point. That helps you, again, determine the right strength of the system, how much data should be available, what the swap space is, and how much memory is available to you. So you can directly define for this one system what is needed, what is necessary in terms of every single data part that is available. And again, just to prove that it works, the same sensor, Linux physical disk SNMP sensor, is available as well on Ubuntu as it is on Debian. So you can gather up the same information at every single point and be informed of what is happening on the system itself. And with this information ready to your hands, you can develop a baseline information part for every single Linux environment you have in your company. So you can monitor every single SNMP system directly from the get-go, get an overview over the baseline stats, and then build up with specialized tools or specialized queries in the very background. And with this one, Mustafa, that's your topic.
Thank you, Marco. Let me my screen. Right. All right. Thank you, Marco. And now we've seen the SNMP sensors that can be used. Next, we talk about the second protocol that we use in Linux monitoring, which is SSH. SSH, of course, becomes very powerful when you need more details than what SNMP can provide, because PRTG can run commands directly on the host via SSH. And that way you can get access to metrics that simply aren't available via SNMP. PRTG's SSH approach is basically with each scanning interval, PRTG logs in over SSH and executes commands on the host to gather data. One sensor I consider essential in practice is the SSH inodes free 2, because, of course, as we've said, inode exhaustion can take down a system while disk space still looks healthy. SSH remote ping sensor on the other hand is also a bit of a special sensor, because this sensor answers the question, can the server reach a second target? So it's not checking if PRTG can reach an endpoint. It's actually checking if your Linux server can reach another endpoint. There we also have, of course, basic sensors as well. So you see SSH disk-free sensors. We talked about inodes, info, as well as load average. This is when it comes to, let's say, the basics or the more basic SSH sensors. When you need more deep, detailed insights, this is where you can utilize the script sensors. And here we have three. SSH script, that's the OG script sensor. It has a single value output. The SSH script v2, on the other hand, has a better security model, improved SSH handling. It also supports multiple channels. With the SSH script sensor, the basic sensor, you can only get one channel with a single value output. The script v2 sensor is more future-proof. It allows multiple channels, as we've seen, and has improved handling. SSH script advanced, on the other hand, allows passing custom parameters into your script. It also allows multi-channel output as well as dynamic channel creation. So it can actually change the channels according to the results. Moreover, you can also add units into the script advanced sensors. And I give the floor again to Marco to show us how this all looks in real life. On to you, Marco.
Once again, thank you very much, Mustafa. And we're just quickly jumping into the system back again on the SSH level now. The first information I always like to give ahead of time, because there are certain systems that are not running the SNMP correctly or are too old to run the SNMP that is compatible, or you don't want to configure SNMP because it's not your whole system. There's always a workaround for these systems. For example, in these points, I always like to say that the information that is available via SNMP in most of the cases is also available via SSH. As you can see, there is an SSH disk-free sensor that uses just the basic SSH configuration patterns, which just gives back the information in these terms like free bytes, free space, and total space that is available to this whole system as a complete overview. So if you're not able to configure SNMP for any sort of reason, any sort of case, and you still need to have this data available to you, you can use SSH as a scripting language directly from the system. The sensors you are seeing, as I've marked them here, are pre-built sensors. You don't have to configure them on your own. You just have to run them out. Additionally, on top of these ones, they can help you define more and more in-depth information towards your own system. For example, in this regard, we're looking at an inodes free. This helps you determine if the inodes are still available, what is still available, and how much you could be spending on the specific inodes in the specific interfaces, in the specific runtimes that you have at this regard. So this is an additional sensor you have on top. You don't need to use the sensor wherever you need them, but you can add them as much as you want them to the system itself. So you extend the monitoring coverage you have towards any sort of problem that is in there. And since inodes are always a topic in terms of Linux environments that could be running low in certain scenarios, you should consider doing this for systems where you know, okay, I need to monitor this data. This is very important towards the things I'm already looking on top of just monitoring the disks via SSH, via SNMP, whatever you have in these regards. Top of these one, information like the MAM info we have in there is also available to you. So you can use this as well via SSH as an alternative on the settings, and you can jump as bad as you want into load averages and gather up the same data that way. So if it's not available directly, you can still make use of everything we're giving. And once again, just a quick reminder, use the history to see what is developing in your system and use the options that are provided. Change the limits on the sensors, change the limits on the specific channels you need to fit your needs. This system is there for you to configure it to your best practices to see what and how much data you are needing. And on top of this one, just a quick overview, what is possible if you're just jumping for Linux environments at all. Since this is not all, we're also talking about specific device types that can be added to this one. Like, for example, SAN enclosure system, logical disk systems, or even things like, for example, remote pings, which you can't access directly for this whole system. And on top of these, everything Mustafa said towards the scripting environment, where you can then start expanding your whole system to a point that should not be covered in the simple system, but needs to be there for you to determine everything is in a working state. And with these ones, we're also trying to help. For example, this is a quick one we have in our help desk system already running, which you can just simply copy out and get to yourself at this point. This just helps you, quickly explains to you how you would be monitoring processes in Linux environments. It's a step-by-step guide. It's a quick guide that helps you with the SNMP configuration, that tells you what is happening on the system and gives you the right configuration for your sensor itself to be added and to be added to further deployments towards further templates that are already set up. And you can use them to, for example, then gather up data about the amount of active processes that are running and see that always the right value is recovered, or even put it into a custom table overview, which gives you the overview of how many sensors or how many processes are running and what are the status of these processes. In this regard, it's running on our data hub, which means I can now monitor the process itself. I can now see that it's running and that it's recovering with the status okay. So I'm always on the right side. I know that it's good and I know it's in a workable state. That's a quick one. We are not leaving you out there. The help desk is always available for us. It even goes further, like this one, which is a little bit more of a flexible scripting environment in these regards. This is a predefined script that helps you monitor and automatically restart services on a Linux host. Again, available to you in the help desk. Just search for it, how to automatically restart a service on Linux, and you will be seeing the script, which is directed towards restoring everything and giving us the information. And then it's also providing the information directly into PRTG. So we are gathering up the information once again, seeing that in the data hub, the service is running, getting the information back and knowing, okay, we can work safely now. We've got the process covered. We've got the service covered. We've got basically everything in the system running towards the steps we want to do. And on top of these ones, we're also pushing to give you more and more information. In this regard, very easy for you to find, and I always recommend it during every training that is given out, during basically everything we're doing and trying to provide information for everybody out there. You can find at our homepage, paessler.com, under resources, our PRTG sensor hub. That sensor hub is an open point where a lot of additional information can be gathered up. Scripts, templates, and full-on sensors. You can just put in your search queries, like for example, Linux, and then filter for what you have, like our native sensors, our predefined written scripts, or third-party scripts that are available. They are then pushed for you. You can search through them, find what you want to find in these regards. And for example, one thing I really like, Linux Disk Smart. With this one, you get a predefined sensor, a complete written guide to what you need to do on server side and device side to get this thing running. And then you get an overview of the smart status of those connected devices or of these connected settings. So everything you can see, HDD, SSD, whatever is connected at that point, you have it at your fingertips and can use it. And additionally, we're also providing the scripts. As you saw, the Linux service script is already available there. The Linux distribution that don't work in these regards, we're trying to help out as much, even going as far as MySQL. And on the very top of this one, when we've covered everything in terms of the Linux distribution itself, we've talked about how Linux develops the data, how we use it in SNMP and SSH. We still want to jump a little bit above because it is rarely just the sense in the system itself to be a Linux system. There is still an application running. An application is running on top of it, so this application is something we also need to take a look at. So as a building point, we are also recommending using things like, for example, REST custom sensors to get information out of a system that is running already. It does not stop at the pure interfaces of the Linux with SNMP and SSH, but it develops into things like, for example, in this REST and custom sensor, where we're getting the information from a Proxmox cluster to see where are we going with this? What's the status for the cluster information? Node 1, Node 2, Node 3. Is it fully available? Data like this may not be available via SSH. It may not be available via SNMP, but using REST sensors to query HTTP APIs that are already available to the whole system, that are already there for you to get up data and move forward with a lot more in terms of what you need in these regards. you can see that you're also able to gather up this data. At the very bottom, things like API codes per hour, API codes in these regards, where we are also setting up a lot of information here, for example, from a real dashboarding environment like Meraki, where we can just develop on another metrics we're gathering. How much are we doing? Or moving even further, like for example, here in these regards, loads of the firewalls are built upon systems that are hardened Debian Linux systems or sort of these Linux systems, where we can even gather up data from these systems anymore. So like this, it's a FortiGate. We are querying the FortiGate for its license information directly out of the system. This is not available via SNMP. This is not available via SSH, but this is available via the REST API the system provides. So we can query this REST API, gather up this data in total, put it into the whole perspective of the system itself, and move forward from these points. And then once again, coming back to our data hub, which helps in these regards as well, we can also see the ingress from the systems. So just plain data gathering at these points. And also in these cases, we're not trying to leave you alone at that part. For specific overviews, like for example, virtualization system, as Docker was mentioned in the comments already, we also have sensors that are built upon these derivations down there, where we can get like container status information from a Docker system directly. So we have more and more information available and readily available to you at any point. And with these informations, I think, Mustafa, you still have something for the multi-platform probe.
Yes, we do. Let me share my screen again. And thank you, Marco, for showing us the sensors. So now we've covered the available sensors in PRTG, whether SNMP or SSH. Next, we talk about another capability that is currently available in PRTG, which is the PRTG multi-platform probe. As you might know, the PRTG core server itself at the moment runs only on Windows. Our classic remote probe also runs only on Windows. However, we've released a multi-platform probe that runs on Linux, ARM, and even container platforms. The multi-platform probe is available in every license, same as our classic probe. Also, an unlimited number of probes are tied to every license, of course, with our recommendations when it comes to performance. The multi-platform probe is supported in our 3 license types: PRTG Network Monitor, PRTG Hosted Monitor, and also definitely our PRTG Enterprise Monitor. As you see here, it runs independently and connects back to PRTG to transmit the monitoring data, same as our classic probe does, however, with a small caveat. If we look at the architecture behind the multi-platform probe, you will notice the NAT server in between PRTG and the probe. Aside from the NAT server, we also have a probe adapter that is installed with the core server on the same machine. And between the NATs and the NAT server and the probe adapter, this basically translates the information to PRTG. The NAT server, we do recommend that the NAT server is installed on another server aside from PRTG. However, it can run on the same server as PRTG. And as we've said, you can connect an unlimited number of multi-platform probes to your PRTG core server. Now let's bring everything together. Today, we've explored how PRTG helps monitor Linux and Unix environments with far more depth than just simple uptime checks. With SNMP, we get fast, lightweight visibility into core basic metrics like disk memory and system load. With SSH, this is where we can get deeper command level insights into processes, services, performance, and basically anything you can script. Combining the both together, of course, gives you the comprehensive Linux monitoring across all major distribution and really gives you the proactive monitoring that you're looking for. And lastly, our custom SSH script sensors let you tailor PRTG to any application or services. And I believe we have a bit of time, if I'm not mistaken, for some questions.
Mustafa, I have to say something. Like I'm hosting a lot of webinars, but this seems to be a record amount of questions. So extra kudos to our two colleagues, Jasmine and Fabienne, who have been answering very, very professionally in the background. So applause for them. And then they purposely left some over for live answering. So they would have totally owned it all the way through, but we want to do that live as well. And this is your applause, you two, well deserved. So there are more questions flooding in as we speak. Let's see. Marco already said that he wants to answer this in real life. Are the SSH sensors capable to user SSH keys, or is it username password based? This is a question of Michiel Dietz.
Yeah, I've marked this instantly because I saw it quite quickly. The credentials are for you to be set up for every single device, for every single group, for every single prop you're working with. Let me just quickly redact the screen sharing once again from Mustafa and jump over into the system itself. Once you're setting up in PRTG, you are required to add some credentials to the system. And in the credentials part itself for SSH connections you will be using, you can then decide yourself what authentication method are you wanting to use. Do you want to use the standard username password device, or do you want to go with a private key in these regards? And on top of these ones, you can then move a little bit further. For example, do you want to use SSH rights elevation, or are you not using an SSH rights elevation? Are you sudoing? Are you sudoing without a password? Or are you using su as the deprecated version from the backtime? And then you can use the SSH connection mode. So you're free in configuring how you want to connect to the device, how you should be authenticating to the device, and how this should be working. In these regards, it's your choice to use what you want, but you should always be matching the rights you need. So if you want to jump in and run a script, you will probably have to use the SSH rights elevation for secured systems in these regards.
Thanks, Marco. I hope this covered everything. And then we have the next question from Ferraz. How can we implement high availability and failover for PRTG in a Linux-heavy infrastructure? And this one is for Mustafa to answer.
My pleasure. Well, the clustering solution in PRTG works exactly the same regardless of the types of sensors you're running. Perhaps the only sensors that are not clustered are the passive sensors, so sensors who are waiting to receive data because, of course, the endpoint changes. Aside from that, the type of sensors you're running are not a factor in using the embedded cluster solution.
Thank you, Mustafa. Rajesh has a question, and one of our hidden stars, Fabienne, will answer this live. Can I integrate PRTG alerts with Jira Service Management? Fabienne, please.
Hi, yes. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, very good. So there's the short answer is there's no native sensor for that, but the integration works very well using our standard PRTG notification methods. So there are many supported ways. One of them would be to use the webhook, which is recommended for us. And by that, you just create an HTTP notification in PRTG, and that should be the easiest and most the best way for you.
Merci, Fabienne. And then Rune has a question. Since we monitor 100 plus Linux servers, it would be nice for a way to replace old sensors with the new V2 ones on all servers at once. Any way to script that? And this is once again, Mustafa wants to answer this live.
Yes, sure. Well, this is actually now possible to script with our API v2. You can add devices through the API v2. However, another option would be actually the device templates. So the v2 sensors can be added to device templates, and you can apply that to, along with auto discovery, of course, to the existing devices to add the sensors you want. Then using multi-edit, you're able to delete the older sensors by actually selecting them by sensor types from under sensors, and then you get the list and you can select all and delete. Back to you, Dominic.
Thank you. I have a look around if there are any questions that are marked at the moment for live answering. I can't see any. So just a general note, like if you have a specific issue or a question regarding your own PRTG installation infrastructure, like our support is, dare I say, world-class. So just reach out to them. Like we are very, very competent and very happy to help you on that. Saying this at this time and place. And I see that Jasmine is typing an answer for also Rajesh at the moment, but maybe, Jasmine, we can take this live as well. Monitoring for Dell IDR, I don't know how to pronounce it. IDREC and Hyper-V. So Jasmine, perhaps just do it live.
That's a good question. Thank you, Rajesh, for the question. Yeah, we can monitor Dell Power Edge servers using IDREC. We have 5 sensors that are based on SNMP. And I will share the link here in the response as well. And for Hyper-V also, we have 5 WMI sensors that can help you monitor the different utilization metrics, and also some scripting sensors that can help you to see what is the amount of the checkpoints available. Now, I just prepared the answer and I'll hit send, so you will have also all the links in the answer.
Yeah. And maybe just a little information because we're talking about hypervisors and there's a question coming up with Proxmox right now. And I think we can be very happy at that very point that we can tell you that with the next versions, there will be Proxmox sensors entering the testing phase or the live phases already on all of your systems. So you can then use basic Proxmox servers directly out of the box, and they will be available with one of the next updates. And should be coming very soon.
And actually, it's available already in the version 117, 2 sensors. One is for virtual machine, and the next one is for containers. And we also work on the new sensor that will be released very soon.
So everybody who's using Proxmox, good news for you. We have heard you.
What a great way to finish up this section. And as I said prior, rest assured that all of the remaining questions will be answered via email. And with that being said, we will go to the last official part of this webinar for today. And this will just be a little bit of housekeeping. If you want to see some of the presenters of today again soon, we are there for you on March 17th with our quarterly strategic webinar for all end customers. Like this is the way, like if you want to learn more about, for example, the Proxmox sensors and our strategic planning for the year, be there. Like this is the place, as the monitoring matters webinars are very like structured one piece. Like those are the strategic end user webinars once a quarter, the Inside PRTG webinar. And this time, as I already hinted towards, we will unveil our strategic roadmap for 2026. So if you want to know what's up for PRTG in 2026, this is the best way to learn that and ask your questions live. That being said, I already hinted towards this. This has been a great engaged webinar. Thank you so much. I truly believe that this was a great one. Like hit those emojis. I always want to see that. And once again, applause to both speakers and the 2 colleagues in the background answering your questions. Has been a good one. Thank you so much. Like, have a great rest of the day wherever you are in the world. Stay safe. Bye-bye.